In an era where so many young people are confused on who should they choose in finding the life partner, and so many young people even date for several years and they don't end up even marrying the people they are dating. We are in an era where so many are confused. Even after marriage, we have seen people divorced because they realize that the people they chose or they choose were not their life partner. You know, and our today's discussion is going to help you and me to understand who does God have for us? Does God have for me a life partner? Does God have a soulmate for you? And several questions concerning about a life partner. Join us with our guest, Brother John Nganga, who is going to help us to tackle the topic. And I know you're not going to regret this. Thank you so much. You're welcome. Please remember to subscribe on our YouTube channel so that you get our notification on other many videos and other discussions. Thank you and God bless you.
Your behavior, according to James, can tell us what you believe. And if you claim to believe something, but your actions are not backed by it, the truth is that faith is not there. Faith without works is dead, means it doesn't actually exist. And so you need to check the way you approach the issues, not just the issue of marriage, any issue, because that issue is the one that will, that behavior will tell you what to believe. When you behave differently from your belief system, you get very uncomfortable. Psychologists call it cognitive dissonance. When what you know and what you are doing, they are not going the same direction, you'll be totally uncomfortable. And that's why it's very difficult to continue on that line. Next card, Collins. And it's important to understand then that as we go to this, my prayer is that you will keep asking yourself, what is my behavior and how am I actually, how does it show my belief system? You see, beliefs leads to a certain attitude to an issue and finally leads to behavior. I still remember discussing with Rebecca when we prayed together and we went through the process and both of us believed God meant us for each other. And I said, if somebody can convince you that I am the wrong person, and you actually can see as a wrong person, even 2 weeks to the wedding, although the earlier the better, and you left me, I'll go to that person, embrace them, and thank them. Because I would have married the wrong person. If you are not sure as a girl that this is me you should be marrying, don't marry me. Because I don't want to marry somebody who is not God's choice for me. That's basically the biblical view, where you believe if God has somebody for you, nobody can take the person. And if she tries to leave you, she will be totally uncomfortable. Remember, if you're a Christian, you are marrying a Christian girl who also listens to God. If you're a Christian, you are marrying a Christian boy who also listens to God. If that be true, it means that God himself who talks with her or talk means that as you go, you are not in a wild chase. You have a God who actually is behind you. And I would repeat it up even today. Do not bother fight. You hear even boys, because people without biblical worldview, if you see somebody talking with your girlfriend, you again want to fight him. That's pretty foolish for a Christian. If a boy is talking with your girlfriend, he is wasting his time, because if she is God's choice for you and she is somebody who believes in the Lord, she will not be listening to him. He is wasting his time. So you cannot fight over a girl. You can fight over a boy if you believe God is the one who gives. In fact, I repeat what I said. If a boy was able to take away your girlfriend, you should love him and congratulate him for rescuing you from a problem, because you'd have married the wrong person. And you can see in the process, what I'm saying is that you can therefore not have the spirit of hunting. When you are young people, and of course you can see I married in the 1970s. When I say young people, it's the 60s. I was a teenager in the 60s and the 70s. Now, people used to say, I've gone hunting. What were they hunting for? A girl. Now, that is not a biblical language. Another one. A Christian is not in that particular idea. Please, you go into the next card. I say, If what I have said so far is true, you will understand that God has no girlfriend or boyfriend for you. You go through the Bible from Genesis to Revelation, there is no place for girlfriend. So when you say, oh, God, give me a girlfriend, he doesn't know what to give you. God gives husbands and wives. He doesn't give girlfriends and boyfriends. So it will be important to understand, and this one is very important to understand. He expects you to do what Timothy was told. Regard every young woman as a sister. Regard every young man as a brother. The same way you treat your mother's daughters and your mother's sons is the same way you should be in the fellowship. You should not be trying to look to hunt for a wife when it is at an earlier stage, or in fellowship as sisters and brothers until it is time to marry. If no marriage is in view, then you don't start booking each other. And that's really one of the critical things in this subject of finding a life partner. You find a teenager who is 18 years. He actually intends to marry after he has a master's. And most likely you'll get a master's at the age of 27. Surely, why would you be booking a girl that early? And you know what happens, my sister? If you get a girlfriend or a boyfriend at the age of 17, you haven't even matured up to understand women. You haven't matured to understand men. So what happens? Finally, you marry your wife and you have a lot of problems because you haven't understood the opposite sex. It is this general fellowship where you don't pair up. You are just enjoying each other's company that allows you to understand women generally. So finally, when you marry one, you yourself will understand this is the way women behave. But if you book like a puppy, what we call puppy love, at the age of a teenager, you are booking somebody, you have just blocked her from the ability to know everybody. Because every time you see him, you see him with another brother, you say, but I'm your boyfriend. How come you are going? God intends for us to enjoy our youth, not to behave like we are married when we are still too early. If you can't see any marriage foreseeable, don't start booking a girl. Why? You know, even if you don't book her, she will still be available by the time it is time to marry. If you have not asked God for a wife yet, don't spend your time. In fact, if you have understood what I'm saying, you should not be having one girlfriend. All sisters should be your girlfriends. You should not be having one boyfriend. All brothers should be your boyfriend. Enjoy fellowship. Exactly the way Timothy was told. Look at every young woman as your sister. Look at every young man as your brother. That's the fellowship you're talking about. But that only comes if you have a biblical worldview. And what's the biblical worldview? That God is the one who knew that Adam required a wife and made a wife for him. And even you, he knows you and he knows you need a wife. So he will finally at the right time give you a wife. That is a very, very important thing to understand. The other thing I draw from the same information is that marriage cannot be tried. You know there are trial marriages. My friend, when you are ready to get married, get married. Marriage cannot be tried. God hates divorce. Hence, you can't try marriage and then drop a girl. You get to her, and once you are married, you must stay there. That's why you should not marry in a hurry. That's why we older people should not be insisting on boys. When are you marrying? When are you marrying? No, they might marry in a hurry. And yet, it's the kind of decision you should take a lot of care with. Because if you are entering a dual carriageway, or Thika Road is even worse, you make a mistake of entering the wrong lane, you might have to go another 10 kilometers before you can change your mind. In a dual carriageway, you must be careful which way you turn. And marriage is like a dual carriageway. You turn one direction, you marry this girl, you are not allowed to leave her until the next roundabout. And the next roundabout is called death. That's why you need to be very careful. Don't rush into a marriage. Don't go into it as a teenager. Wait until you are mature enough to pray and understand what God wants. Because when you enter, you can't pull out of it. You know, it is so serious that when Joseph proposed to Mary, and they were not yet married, when Mary got pregnant, my friend Joseph did not say, I'm dropping a girl. he said, I am divorcing. And you ask yourself when you read the book of Matthew, but yet you are not yet married, but you are Christian. Your yes must be yes, and your no must be no. So you should not be picking girls and dropping them. You know, there are some boys who are experts in dropology. By the time they are that year, they have picked and dropped, and every girl being dropped is ending up in hospital psychologically. Surely. How would you expect to be going to heaven after you have done so much damage to so many girls? Because you pick them without thinking and you drop them. But I'm giving the impression this is a problem of boys. No, some girls are like that. They allow a guy to come. They don't say no. They don't say yes because they also want another one. There are 6 boys all applying at the same time. Nobody is being told no. Nobody is being told yes. Manipulating human beings and frustrating brothers when you don't say yes or no. And in the process, you think you are going to heaven. Which heaven? When you are hurting brothers. You know, I keep saying, either party must understand marriage is a serious matter. You should not be running into it. Have fellowship with girls, have fellowship with boys. Wait until you are mature enough to make the decision. So marriage cannot be tried. I went for a course in Finland maybe 25 years ago, and that's when I first had the word trial. I saw somebody I saw one of my workmates. I used to work for Shell. I saw one of my Finnish workmates with a boy. I said, "Oh, that's your husband." No. So, it was, so how are you dating? No, we stay together, but we are trying our marriage. If it works, after 1 or 2 years, we will go together. We will be married. Actually, marriage is not triable. What do I mean? As long as you know this guy can leave you, you have to treat him carefully so that he doesn't drop you. The moment you sign on the dotted line, most people end up getting surprised. The same boy who was pleading with you now knows you can't leave him. Marriage cannot be tried because the moment you make a commitment, you might discover the person start treating you in a different way because now he is sure you are his. So I am trying to get you to understand that if you have a biblical worldview, you will go into marriage seriously. Not. Let me just read for you Galatians chapter 2 verse 19. Galatians chapter 2 verse 19 to 20. For through the law I died to the law, so that I might live for God. I have been crucified with Christ, and I no longer live, but Christ lives in me. The life I live in the body, I live by faith in the Son of God, who loved me and gave himself for me. I'm reading that verse to emphasize, a Christian no longer lives for himself. He is saying, I died to the law, so that I may live for God. Verse 20, I have been crucified with Christ, and I no longer live, but Christ lives in me. What does that mean? When you approach a girl, Christ is approaching a girl. What does it mean? When you say yes to a boy, your Christ is saying yes. You need to walk in the Spirit. And to walk in the Spirit means you don't fulfill the desires of the flesh. You seek God's direction. So when you are deciding who to marry, you don't choose. You go to God and tell him, God, who should I marry? Because I am no longer living. Christ is living in me. I want to do God's will. And that's what he is actually saying. You know, what that means is Christians do not choose a spouse. They only find the one God has chosen because Christ is living in them. That's really what you're talking about. Once you choose Christ, and I've told young people that, the last choice a Christian makes is the choice of Christ. The moment you choose Christ, you'll never make another choice. And that's not even about a wife, even a job. The decisions you make, you don't make a decision yourself. You ask God, what is the best decision to make? And sometimes, I'm a little older than you, I have my feelings is to make a certain decision. Then the Spirit says, not that one. I would have to backslide for me to follow my will against God's will. So it means that in the end, I don't do what pleases me. I do what pleases God. And that means I don't follow my choice. I follow God's choice. Once you choose Christ as Lord, in other words, you get saved, that's the last choice you ever make. You lose all other choices, including of a life partner. You now allow God to make choices. Even now, I've been born again for more than 50 years. I still have to depend on God to lead me for every decision. If he is really not just a savior, he is Lord, you follow his choices. That's why we say Christians find a life partner. God chooses, they only follow God's choice. That's what really happened with happens with Eliezer. In the Genesis chapter 24, verse 14, Eliezer found only the one God had chosen for Isaac. Let me just read verse 14. Eliezer in prayer. May it be that when I say to a girl, please let down your jar, that I may have a drink, and she says, drink, I will water your camels too. Let her be the one you have chosen for your servant Isaac. By this I will know that you have shown kindness to my master. Are you getting the language? In other words, I don't want to choose. I don't even know how to choose. This is a strange place. All the girls may even look beautiful. I do not want that responsibility of choosing. So what do? I'm going to put this litmus test. God make it that the girl who agrees to give me water and then voluntarily, without me asking her, offers to water the camels, which is a much more difficult than watering a human being. Let that be the girl. He prayed, and sure enough, Isaac ended up getting a good wife in Rebecca, but he did not choose. Christ chose. And you need to understand that's what happens for any Christian. You listen to God, you follow his choice, he leads you to a person who can, here the word we are using, he gives you a better choice than your choice. Why does God give a better choice than your choice? Because you don't have enough data. How can you make a choice when you don't even have enough data? Who is this girl? What is her background? You know, the trouble is, I sympathize with the young people. You look at a girl, she looks beautiful on the outside. But you know what you see on the outside is not the person you are marrying. The person you are marrying is inside. And she could be very beautiful on the outside, but an ugly girl stays inside. Now, it just tells you that you cannot choose a wife on the basis of beauty, because the person inside is a totally different. That's why sometimes you wonder, how could such a beautiful boy have married such an ugly man? It's because she's a wise girl. She listened to God, and she knew she's not marrying the guy looking grotesque on the outside. The person living inside is a beautiful person, a loving person, a believer in the Lord, and they have a wonderful marriage because they are beautiful in the inside. What I'm trying to see is, do not go into marriage looking for a better choice or a worse choice. Go into marriage looking for a right choice. There's a difference between a better choice and a right choice. When I was Form 2 in 1969, I used to do technical and drawing and woodwork. And I still remember being taught something called dovetail joint. Those of you who are engineers who understand. I actually made a box, a suitcase, wooden one, without using any nails, where you are able to put two sides of a piece of wood, and then they fit together in what is called a dovetail joint. First of all, you do all the pieces of wood, and then you assemble them. My friend, if a piece of wood does not have the right side for the other side, they can't fit together. To make a dovetail joint, the right negative must go with the right positive in order for them to fit. And it's exactly the same in marriage. The piece of wood may look fantastic, but look until you find the one who is right. What matters, a good marriage is not based on whether the woman is better or worse, it's based on, is he the right one? A good marriage is not based on, is the guy rich or poor, is he the right one? Once you marry the right person, both of you will enjoy your marriage, and you are going to enjoy because you dovetail into each other. Now I have to be finishing. I'm looking at my time. I've taken that a minute, and I want us to have a long time for discussion. Let me just go quickly to what I call steps to finding a life partner. Steps, and they are in my book. And I would encourage you to get a book, because in this time I don't have enough time. But in the book I have long enough to discuss the issue. What are steps leading you to God's choice for you? How can you find God's choice for you? Step number 1, find out you yourself if you are called to singlehood or marriage. I'm sure you're a little disappointed. You don't start by looking for a life partner. You start by finding out, are you a life partner yourself? I don't have enough time, but in my book, I've written a whole chapter on singlehood. You need to understand that our African worldview regard anybody single as having a problem. But the scriptures do not tell you there is anything wrong. In fact, it says, Jesus said, some people are single because they have chosen to serve the Lord. Others are single because they have been made by man. God is very clear. There is nothing wrong with you serving the Lord as a single person. In Africa, many of the people who are missionaries in Africa never got married. Many single ladies, many single men. One of the most famous headmasters at Alliance, and an old boy of Alliance, one of the most famous one was somebody called Carey Francis. I hear he may have had a girlfriend in Cambridge when he was teaching there. When he decided to come to Africa, he couldn't get anybody willing to come, and he came and got married to his boys. I am told Carey Francis knew his students thoroughly, because that's the only thing he had committed. And he served the Lord in a wonderful way in Africa. In fact, we are told that more than half of the first cabinet of Kenya were boys of Carey Francis, although he never got married. You need to understand that. Do not think, if you really are having a biblical worldview, do not think that married people are better than single people. However, having said that, please understand, if you are single, called to singlehood, you get married, you will give your wife or your husband a very hard time because she's interfering. You enjoy aloneness, and she's going to interfere with that joy of aloneness, and you will not serve the Lord well because of the fighting that will be in your marriage. Do not choose to marry if God has called you to singlehood. Similarly, don't try to be single when God has called you to marriage. Those are the people that tell us they are Christians, tell us they want to be single, then they end up impregnating girls all over, and they are called pastors or fathers or priests or whatever, because they are being single, but God has called them to marriage. That's why the Bible says, do not prevent people from marrying. So do not be single when God has called you to marriage. It will be important that that's a subject you deal with. And because I don't have enough time, I will encourage you to look at my book. Please understand, not everybody is called to marriage. The only thing is, from the data available, most people, more than 90-something%, are called to marriage. A few people are called to singlehood. But if you are, I cannot tell you whether you are called to singlehood or you are called to marriage. But it's important to listen to God. So the first thing you go to God is, have you called me to of course, a lot of pressure. And my book has that subject, that a lot of people pressurize you. Like in Africa, you'll be pressurized until you get married. You are a girl, you are 35, and everybody's on your case. You feel, in order to silence them, let me marry. In other words, you listen to human beings when God has called you to singlehood. You are doing the wrong thing. Stick with what God has told you. And that's very important. That's the first subject you deal with. In the journey to finding a life partner, find out, are you yourself a right partner? Number 2 is find out if you are ready to get married for the right reasons. In other words, why do you want to get married? Are there biblical reasons or not? Because there are wrong reasons. If you want to marry in order to get children, what will happen if you marry and God doesn't give you children? You end up divorcing. What is the reason for marriage? And every young woman, every young man must deal with it. Earlier, we only thought that barrenness was a woman thing. But now there are men who are okay in every way, but because of problems, medical issues, they are unable to get a girl to get pregnant. Will you dump the man? All right up front, you must ask yourself, why am I getting married? And the reason for marriage is companionship. What God said at the beginning is, let a man should not be alone. So you need to ask yourself, what are the reasons? Sort them out. Don't look for a life partner when you have not sorted yourself out. What are the reasons for marriage? Step number 3, evaluate if you are ready for the life partner before finding one you are a life partner. Genesis chapter 2 verse 24 says, For this reason, a man will live. And it's important to understand it doesn't say a boy will live. So don't start looking for a life partner when you're a boy. Don't start looking for a life partner when you're a young girl. You must wait until you fulfill the scriptural requirement. And the scriptural requirement is children are not allowed to marry. You must be an adult in order to marry. And I wish I had enough time, but I'm running out. To say you are an adult, several things have to appear. One of them is physical. Are you physically mature? You must be somebody physically mature in order to impregnate a girl, in order to give birth. I am told if a girl gets pregnant before the age of 20, her pelvic bone is not even ready to deliver a baby. They say teenage pregnancy are called difficult pregnancies. In fact, the girl is admitted in advance because of the danger of trying to put the baby that could destroy her pelvic bone. It's very important to understand physical adulthood is actually required. That's why you are being called a man or you're being called a woman, because you are physically mature. But number two, psychological, emotional maturity. You know, like a boy, you get married, you are now the fully responsible for a girl. You are in your house alone. Then she's just saying she is having this pain, the other pain. She end up crying. The man is also crying. Nobody can help the other because you are not emotionally stable. You must become emotionally mature before you can actually start looking for a life partner, and it will be important. And of course, you are also thinking your thinking capacity. Are you mentally mature? But I want to add this one. Are you financially mature? Because you can't marry a girl for your father to be giving you pocket money to manage. So don't get married. I'm not saying you should be rich, but I'm saying men are providers. So if you be well before you start looking for a life partner, you must say clearly what has God given you that could manage a wife in terms of finances. Do not reply. You know, they say whoever pays the piper determines the tune. That means whoever is funding your marriage will interfere in that marriage. That's why a study done by Desta found out that 30% of the marriages that are breaking because of relative interference. Because the moment you allow them to actually finance your marriage, you interfere. Please remember, you can be married even when all you can afford are 2 cups, one for your wife, one for you, 2 plates, and you can only live in Korogosho, in Nairobi. It's okay. It's your house. And we are not talking about being rich. We are talking about not depending on others. That's what we mean a man shall live. It's somebody who will live and run his own life separate from the parents. And that will be important. Step number 5. Now, once you have sorted out the first 4 steps, you are now ready to get married. So what do? Pray for God to show you the right partner. Not the better partner, not the worst partner, the right partner. And I've already dealt with that. Let God know you are in need of a spouse and seek to hear his choice. Because you see, he says, if you have needs or cares, cast all your cares upon him, for he cares for you. So if you can see, you can marry. And please don't ask God for a wife. When you are, after he gives you a wife, you say, sorry, I'm not ready. And I'll get married after another 5 years. Surely, that's it. By the time you approach the girl, you should have a date of marriage in mind. Whether it is 2 years or 3 years, but it must be a time you have in mind. Because you have already sorted out the basics. You are not booking. You are not having the spirit of hunting. You are ready to get married. You are not marrying, booking in advance because you fear you will not get a wife. If God intends you to marry, there will be a wife at whatever the age he prepares you. So step number 5 is a prayer. And you need to go into prayer. For me, when that time came, I went to a forest in Nairobi called Arboretum, spent time on my own talking to God. What does God want in my life? If I was to marry, who should I marry? It's important that you immerse the process of getting a life partner in prayer. Let God know your needs. Step number 6, read God's word. You know, God speaks through his word. Hence, use God's word to narrow God's choice. Because some questions you don't ask him. Like, for example, You cannot ask him whether to marry another man. Oh, should I marry? I'm called John, but should I marry James? That question has already been answered. Homosexuality is not allowed. Look at Genesis chapter 2, verse 24. For this reason, a man will leave his father and mother and be united to his wife, not to another man. So those are it's narrowing. So although this wide choice, there's a wide choice as a girl, all men are available. It's a choice is not as wide as that. It's only, or rather, all people are available. You roll it. Only men can marry you. If you're a man, only women can marry you. And not all women. Only women that are not married. So, again, you can see the first one was all human beings. The second one is all people of the opposite sex. Number two, now we have come to all of those that are not married. You are not allowed to marry somebody already married. That will be committing adultery. So it is very, 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 very important that you understand that the circle is getting, the wide circle has become smaller as you now go for only people that are not married. You should not be approaching somebody who is already somebody else's partner. So it must be opposite sex. Number three, the thing gets even smaller. You are not allowed to marry anybody who is not born again. 2 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 14. Do not be yoked together with unbelievers. For what do righteousness and wickedness have in common? Or what fellowship can light have with darkness? Non-Christians have been called darkness. Wherever light comes, you know, darkness just disappears. So the circle gets very small. It's not everybody of the opposite sex who is not married. It's only those that are single and born again. So do not start seeing a girl who is very beautiful or a girl who talks to you very nicely, brother, and start thinking she's a candidate. You cannot, God, remember you're waiting for God's choice. God cannot choose for you somebody who is not born again, because then he will be contradicting his own word. And God and his word are the same. He sticks with his word. So the circle has gotten small. It's only people of the opposite sex who are not married and who are actually born again. Can you see the circle is pretty small? Next, only those who can be one in mind, since you will be one flesh. Please understand, now in that circle of born again people, Amos 3:3 says, do two walk together unless they have agreed to do so. In other words, of all the single brother, all single girls who are available, it has to be somebody you know, so that you can understand each other. So do not start thinking that you are going to marry somebody in India if you have never gone to India. Do not start thinking about it and you not marry somebody who is in Kisumu. Marriage, like I'll be saying in a minute, it's a physical thing. Therefore, it has to be somebody who in mind who is like you. If you are in a fellowship with the girls and there's a girl you are disagreeing with constantly, it's very clear she's not in the circle of people you are marrying. Because the people God intends for you to marry will be somebody you will have similar mind. They will have the same side. They are going to have the same. They are going to have the same kind of mind on all major doctrines. You can't say you're a Pentecostal and you want to marry somebody who laughs at you whenever you speak in tongues. It is important to understand in the circle you are dealing with. It has to be somebody who is born again like you, but it has also to be somebody whose major doctrine, not everything you have to agree, but all major issues, you must actually be one. Do not marry somebody to evangelize them. Let them be evangelized before you marry. Marriage is not a vehicle for evangelizing. You marry because you already evangelized. Do not marry to evangelize, since spouse is your first pastor. The person you are marrying will be your pastor. Pastors out there cannot know your needs unless you share with them, but your wife knows your needs. So how can you marry somebody who cannot pastor you? And you know that the wife of a spouse is to pastor the other spouse. So you need to understand the reason why you cannot marry a backslider Christian or a Christian who is not sure of their faith is because they are going to look after you. Do you want to go to heaven? Look for somebody who is so sure of going to heaven, they will not leave you behind. That's what we are talking about. Aim at spiritually, marrying somebody spiritually, okay. Do not marry somebody like a friend of mine I heard that he's dating somebody whose Christianity we are not sure. And she said, no, 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 no. Although he's not saved yet, he has started attending church, my friend. Attending church is not a bad person to marry. It's somebody to do follow up on until they can actually receive the Lord. So you need to understand, if you are marrying somebody, the scriptures are clear. Two cannot walk together unless they are agreed. You are a prince of the Lord. You can only marry a princess of the Lord. And you accept each other in the way you worship. Because home is the first church. Before you can go to Reverend's church, you first of all pray in your own house. So if you can't even pray together when you are in the fellowship, remember, you are not marrying yet. You are just getting to know sisters and brothers. You are knowing each other. And their theology is a theology you can't stand. Then clearly, they are not in your circle. Next, where are they going? I've just written a book called Discovering Your Life Purpose. There are two purposes that cannot go together. You know, you need to understand very clearly that you have congruent in vision and mission. A common future matters more than a similar one. If you, for example, date a girl and she's looking for a green card to go to America, and you believe clearly God has called you to go to the 1040 window, Saudi Arabia, Iran, that's where you are intending to serve the Lord. And she's intending to enjoy it in America. Surely, it's clear she is not within your circle for the people to marry. Why? Because going to America is not a sin. She's not doing a wrong thing by going to America. Maybe there's a reason God wants her to go to America. It's not a sin. All the other things you have mentioned is okay. But you can see her vision and mission are different. Where God has called her, it's not where has called you. Just listen to Genesis chapter 12, verse 3 and 4. But let me allow you to read that one on your own. But let me read verse 15. The Lord God took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden to work it and to take care of it. God gave the man a mission. But basically, when Eve came, she also started working on the same garden. Then Genesis 12, Abraham is called. When he is called, automatically, Sarai, she was not Sarah by that time, had to go together. You cannot be married and one is going to Mecca and the other one is going to Medina. You need to have similarities in vision and mission. And you can see from what I've said so far, the circle is getting pretty narrow. It's not as complicated. God, who will I marry? The scriptures have already given us direction that narrows the people we are to marry. And of course, the thing I said earlier needs to be emphasized. It has to be somebody you can meet physically. Why? Matthew chapter 22 verse 30 says, at the resurrection, people will neither marry nor be given in marriage. They will be like angels in heaven. So marriage is not a spiritual thing. No. Marriage is physical. We must meet. So if you cannot meet physically, you cannot marry. God will not lead you to marry somebody and you don't meet them. If he wants you to marry somebody, you'll meet him. And we don't have enough time to go into this. But it's important that among the people God intends you to marry are people you may not have met yet, but before the time of your marriage, God will make you meet. Maybe the person you're going to marry is currently in Moscow and you are in Kenya. My friend, don't bother getting frantic. When God wants them to actually get to marry you, they'll come. For me, I married somebody who was in Makerere in Uganda, and I'm in Kenya. And as I was praying, God lead me to someone. I didn't know who it is. But just before I left campus, Jomo Kenyatta issued a presidential decree that all Kenyans must leave Makerere and come to Nairobi or any other university. But because of Idi Amin, they were not allowed to stay in Uganda. That's how Rebecca was relocated to Nairobi, and I met her just before I left campus. And that's how I now knew there was a girl. And although I didn't propose until I was well out of campus, it's important to understand God used a presidential decree. In fact, I tell people, I got a wife by presidential decree. God can also the president to move things for you to meet the person you are going to meet. That's why I believe it's God who leads. It's God who creates the circumstances. And you need to understand that is what happened. Next, in this circle, so it is people you have met If people meet that, it must be somebody you love. There are many people you meet, but you don't have feelings for. If God intends you to marry someone, it will be important that you have love for him. But what does love mean? Not the last, not somebody you want to sleep with, but somebody, whenever you see them, you desire their good. Love is desiring the best and feeling committed to help the object of love. When you want to sleep with somebody, that's called lust. But they have somebody who you regard, whenever they need somebody you want to provide. That is what you need to check. Who among the people in the opposite sex do you have a feeling of desire? And it's important to understand, maybe it is not one, there are several, but it must be in this narrowing circle. It has to be somebody you have met physically, whose welfare you are committed to providing. But here comes the most difficult of them. It is that person must love you in return. I believe that God works like a magnet. He puts one piece of the magnet in your heart, then puts the other piece of the magnet in the girl. By the time you are proposing, you should be very surprised if she actually says no, because there is something pulling you together. You don't have to philosophize. You don't have to hunt. God will prepare you for each other, so that by the time you are proposing, God has prepared the other part. But you need to test whether you really have love. How do you test it? It has to be agape type of love, where you are not loving the person because they love you. You desire. Agape is friendship, love, romantic love, but agape love is the real thing that you require. This is a love that does not require reciprocation. Enough love to surmount the barriers. Like the person God leads you may be blind, may be deaf, may be crippled, and God leads you to them. But you have so much love, the fact that they have a problem does not stop you, because your love goes beyond the problem. You must, whether it's deformity or whatever the barrier. Maybe the person you love, their parents may not like you. And so it might take quite a process to wait until the parents can agree. But there's so much love, you are willing to wait. Now, that's what we are talking about. So be sure that God has dropped that, because that has to be God who drops that kind of love that can go through the barriers. Sometimes it's differing educational backgrounds, cultural backgrounds, but you have so much love, you are willing to go over the challenges that are there. But first of all, identify them. Don't cover up. People say love is blind. That's not Christian love. Christian love, you know all the problems, but you have enough love to go over them. Analyze the situation. Analyze the girl before you propose. Get to know her. If it is sympathy you have, oh, that girl, nobody will marry her. Oh, let me marry her. That's not love of God for marriage. That is love for ministry. So you can minister to her without marrying her, if what you have is sympathy, not love. People you sympathize with, you help. You don't marry them. Do not assume the other problem is, oh, I can see this a barrier, but I'll work on it after she is mine. Like, she's very quiet. I don't like people who are quiet. God, but I don't even love her for that, but I'll work on her. Let me tell you something. Any weakness you see in a girl becomes worse after the wedding. I think I've already intimated that. Any weakness you see in a brother becomes worse over time. What Rebecca saw in me more than 40 years ago, some of it, because it's personality, and when you read my book, you understand what I'm talking about. It doesn't change. You have to accept me the way I am. The only thing I can change is sin. I'm not allowed to sin. But there are things about me that are me. So if somebody has some aspects you don't like, can you accept them? Do you have enough love for you to go through? Then that's the time you can say you have love. Then that's the time you now say, do they have similar love for you? These are tough tests, because you can't force somebody to love you. It's voluntary from their behalf. You can't force them. You can't philosophize. That's why when you propose to a girl, don't ask her for an answer. Ask her to go and pray until the answer she gives you will not be emotional. It will be something she has listened to God about. Because the truth of the matter is, only God can drop the love. You have so many weaknesses yourself. For a girl to want to marry you, it's not because you are perfect. It's because God has given her enough love to go over the barriers of your weakness. And that will be very important. Next, as I finish, Do you hear God's voice telling you this is the way? Because that's what the Spirit Scripture say. There'll be His voice saying, this is the way, walk in it. Remember, we started this process in prayer. You have now to listen to God. All that time you have not actually proposed to the girl. What is the Lord saying? And you need to test whether what you are hearing. You may have seen a dream, but you're not allowed to walk with the dream. Why? John chapter 1, verse 1 to 4 says, dear friends, do not believe every spirit, but test the spirit to see whether they are from God. Don't say the girl comes to you, say, I saw you, God has led me to you. Don't agree to marry a girl because she says she had. Test the spirits to see whether it is from God. I think that's that is something that will be important. It's unfortunate I've run out of time. I hope we had been told we can have 1.5 hours. I hope we can still deal with it. So as I finish, how do you approach a girl? Number one, this person who fits this category, do not first of all approach them. Meet them in fellowship. Find a way where they go for fellowship, meet them in fellowship. Do not propose prematurely. Allow a friendship to generate. Don't propose to a stranger. Because you see, you want to test whether there is love. And it's only when you know the real person that you'll be able to test. So don't propose. Have the first stage, I call it acquaintance stage. Be active in the Christian fellowship and make friends with not just her, but with anybody without specializing on her. And you'll get to know the person. And it is this acquaintance stage. It may go for a year. It may go for a time. In fact, if you meet a girl and then she wants you to marry her within 6 months, be very suspicious. There is something she's trying to cover up, and she wants you to marry her so quickly, you don't discover that she was married earlier. You need to give it enough time. The scriptures do not tell us how long this process is, but there must be a process that allows the bones that are locked up in a closet to come out, and you get to know the real person. That's at the acquaintance stage. Once you go through acquaintance stage, you now can allow the thing to develop into common friendship. Now you are dating each other, but without any commitment. You are dating this one, but you are not proposing. In your group of friends, people who feel free to share weaknesses and strengths at that stage. You can go 2 or 3 of you, and you're getting to know. Only after you now know the person, are you ready to go what we call going steady. Says, can we consider whether we are meant for each other? You are still not proposing, but we call it going steady. You are now narrowing, and you are very clear to the girl, I am praying about it. Let's pray about it. Then finally, when you feel the weightiness of the Spirit within you, you now make a proposal. State how you feel without spiritualizing it. It's not a question of spiritualizing. You know, some girls say, you know, he loves me. It's only he is so shy, he can't say. If he is too shy, how will you marry? Marriage requires talking. If a boy is not proposing, he doesn't intend to marry you. If a girl is not talking, she doesn't intend to marry you. Marriage will require talking. So if you can't talk before marriage, there's a problem. So you must verbalize your proposal. You must listen to her. But like I mentioned, whoever proposes, do not ask for an answer immediately. Give a time for prayers. Now, once you have said yes, you don't marry immediately. You now go to a time we call engagement period. What's engagement? Engagement is a time to find out how can we stay together? How can we live together? And you are not yet married, but you have now engaged each other. You are saying, we are preparing to get married. Don't engage and then get married immediately. Some of the things can be sorted out at an earlier stage. And then after that, you now can, in that engagement period, you know the parents, you know each other, you finally can start the process of seeking permission from the parents and getting permission from God through the man of God, and we call that a wedding. It's time for questions. Okay, the first one I can see here is, how do one confirm that the lady you are dating is God's choice for you? Go through the process. I've given about 15 different steps in arriving at it. If you started dating somebody just because they are beautiful, go back to the whole process. That's what I was trying to answer. How do you identify the right person? And if you skipped, I talked too quickly, please pick my book. And you can, it doesn't have to be the bookshop one. You are young people, you can get the Amazon one. It only goes for $3 only. and you can pick a copy. The other one I can see is, what is your advice to men who tell women that they love them the first time they interact? These are jokers. They are not serious Christians. You know, I have just given you the process is very long. Unless they are the type who are hunting, they want to book you. And those are the people who will drop you like hot potato and say, did I ever propose? And that's what a lot of boys do, playing around with the girls' hearts. I will tell them to stop. It's unchristian to frustrate young ladies by talking about loving them and you don't even know them. Somebody asked about meeting in dating sites. I would be very hesitant because I have talked about getting to know the person. Now, how do you get to know a person? And of course, I'm not really very good because I'm not that digital. How do you get to know a person in a dating site? If you meet somebody in a dating site, it's just like you have met somebody in a fellowship. The process I have used of getting to know the people, getting to be friends, it has to follow. Do not say propose to a person from a dating site. Brother Nganga, how do you advise a girl whose man told them that they can ask a girl to be her girlfriend and she should know? Now she is confused. Obviously, now you understand the process. Don't say yes to a man unless you go through the process. Don't be in a hurry. He cannot, even however good he is, if God means him for you, go through the process. Somebody coming to propose to you, you haven't even known each other. Say, I do not say yes to a question I have not studied. I normally do my revision. We have just said that you marry someone you love and who loves you in return. But people say women should marry a man who loves them, and not a man they love. That's unchristian, because both the man and the woman are supposed to love each other. That's a requirement of the scriptures. Love is a requirement of marriage. So how will you marry somebody who doesn't love you? No. My sister, God will give you love for the man. And marriage has so many challenges. I don't want to frighten you, but I'm writing a book which will be coming out in the next 2 weeks, talking about a Christian marriage. And now I'm talking to married people. Marriage is so challenging that if you don't have love, my sister, it will not last in the marriage. So it will be important. I benefited from the wisdom. Okay, that is my friend in Zimbabwe has written. I benefited from this wisdom when Brother Nganga came to Zimbabwe in 2016. That's a friend of mine. I will not read the thing. It's not really a question. He's encouraging you to read the book and listen to what I'm saying. Does God have a soulmate for each person? I would like to ask Biuha Mureithi, what is the answer to that question? Does God have a soulmate for each person? What have I said and what do you understand from the scriptures? Biuha Mureithi, please unmute and answer my question, Biuha.
My understanding from today is that God has given us the liberty to make a choice based on now all those steps that you've talked about. So there's not one specific soulmate or person for you, but he's given you the freedom to make that a choice based on now those steps that you've mentioned.
Thank you very much, Biuha, because you have really helped me. Let me repeat. God has not allowed you to choose. He chooses for you. I have read the scriptures telling you he has chosen. Do not marry a man. That's his choice. He has said, do not marry somebody you have met. That's his choice. He has said, do not marry somebody saved. Surely, are you the one choosing or God is choosing? The answer to the question, yes, God has a soulmate for you, but he has already declared for you who you can marry. But at the end, you have to listen to his voice. It is not you choosing, it's him choosing. You listen to his voice. And that's what I was saying. So, Biuha, you have really helped me to repeat myself. Thank you very much. How kindly touch on the impact of compatibility on the success of marriage. I've already dealt with it. I said there are some things that will be challenging, but the question is, do you have enough love to accept somebody who is different from you? If the answer is yes, go ahead. But that should all happen before the wedding. You should know that's why you are spending time dating in the process so that you can see the areas you are not compatible. Because if you are not compatible and there isn't love to cover it, your marriage will be a difficult marriage. What about relationship where people keep breaking up and getting back together? Do godly dating suffer attacks from the enemy? I agree, you can have challenges. And because of the challenges, you can say, wait a minute, why don't you give ourselves a break of a few months and pray and seek the mind of God? Nothing wrong with that. But if you are hurting each other, that's not really biblical. I want to say, how do you navigate challenges when the parents, how do you navigate when challenges when the parents are objecting to your choice partner? Very important. I will not advise you to go ahead and marry once your parents are not comfortable. But I will not tell you not to marry when you have heard the voice of God. Because of course, you cannot obey parents against God. The disciples, the apostles told the leaders of the Sanhedrin, make it, that's your choice. Should he obey you or obey God? But before you do that, please remember God can be using your parents to make you think again. So what I would suggest is, if you intended to marry this year and your parents are not happy, go to your parents and tell them, I have heard God's voice, I should marry this girl. But because I respect you, I'm suspending our marriage to give you time. I'll pray for you. You also pray. I'll come back to you after a year. Your parents will feel respected. And if they are Christians, they will pray. Even if they are not Christians, they will know you are serious about listening to God. Again, I repeat, it is not right for you to fail to marry God's choice in order to marry your mother's choice. However, your mother is an important person according to the scriptures. You must honor them and you must not dismiss their concerns without giving them due respect and waiting. The waiting is a sign of respect. Kindly touch on age gap, especially if the man like 10 years young than the lady. I can tell you that's the barrier I was talking about. If you see that barrier, look at it earlier. 3 things I can say. If you are from different, for example, you have 10 years, the first thing is you don't have a similar history. If you are from my generation, we read a book called Coco and Cocogonza, is what we were studying in primary school. So when I talk about it, my wife can remember it, we laugh together. If you marry somebody with 844 and you're not 844, please understand there'll be a challenge in terms of that kind of being age different. However, it doesn't mean you cannot marry. It means that you must test it before the wedding to find out how can you cope. His friends are older than you. How do you go into a relationship? Because you must, during this time of common friendship, before you propose, you'll be with his friends, and you'll discover you're unable to stand them. Don't start thinking that you're going to pull him out of his friends if they are born again. How can you deal with it? So what I'm saying is, don't leap. Look before you leap. It is true there are challenges brought by age gap and other barriers, but it does not mean you don't marry. The things that will cause you not to marry, I've already mentioned. Another one is talking about love at first sight. Do you believe in this? I already told you, I talked about a process. Even if you feel like you love the girl, you don't propose to her. It will take months or years before you can love. At that time, it will not be love at first sight. There will be a process of testing. Even if you love the girl over time, it doesn't matter you love her day 1 or day 20 or after 2 years. There must be a process of courtship that allows to check whether you truly have love or it's just infatuation. Back to the soulmate. What happens if a person marries the wrong person? Won't that cause confusion and how everyone has to marry the wrong person? I told you in advance. If you are in a dual carriageway and you make a right turn, you are at Uhuru, if you know Nairobi, you are coming out from Kenyatta Avenue and you don't want to go up, you want to go down, you want to go to Kisumu, but you turn left. You start going to Mombasa. Then you realize, sorry, I wanted to go to Kisumu. You are not allowed, unless you want to die. You don't change direction. You go until there's the last roundabout in order to change. The same thing with the marriage. That's why I told you, take your time. According to the scriptures, divorce is not allowed. The book of Malachi chapter 15, it says, I hate divorce. So it means once you enter it, you can't start saying, this is not my soulmate. You stay there and ask God for help. And he is able to help. He can change your man. He can change you in order for you to enjoy your marriage, despite the differences that are there. Once you go in, you are going there to stay. So that's why I'm discouraging you from seeing a girl and marrying her without a process of waiting and listening to God. That's what I'm calling testing. Because remember, you don't choose a girl, you find God's choice. And the process is the process of fulfilling first letter of John chapter 4, verse 1. Test. The testing period is what I'm saying. Let it take time before you propose or before you accept. What is your view on how personalities and temperament influence marriage? Another barrier. I hope you'll buy in my new book. I talk about these barriers and challenges in marriage. Background is one of them. Personality is another. You must see them. That's why you must stay together long enough to know the personality of a person. Unfortunately, opposites attract. And your personality, if there's a personal differences, they will harass you. But where there is love, you are willing to accept the person. Personalities do not change, but you are willing to accept the person. You are a talkative person, somebody is quiet, but somehow you like them, you enjoy them. When they are quiet, you know they don't hate you, you know they are not bad, you just accept them the way they are. But all that personality difference has to be thought about before you propose to the girl. Now, what I would encourage you is go to my website, because you don't have to buy my book. Go to my website, you'll find a lot of material on finding a life partner. My website is my name, www.johnganga.org, www.johnganga.org. You can also go to my YouTube account and you'll find talks on finding a life partner. My YouTube account is John N. Nganga. You'll find a lot of talks, some are audio, some are video. You'll find a lot of talks on it. And you can also write to me. When you go to my website, it will give you an opportunity to email me a question, and this discussion can continue.
Okay, thank you so much, Nganga, for such a wonderful session with us. Indeed, you have shared with us a lot of wisdom, and we bless the Lord for you. And I know we will plan for another session so that we can still continue with another part of discussions. Thank you so much. God bless you and do you good.